Okay, so I wanted to do a comparison between the Hexgaming Phantom controller and the GameSir G7 Pro. I have reviewed both of these already in writing, and I'll put a link to those reviews in the description below. But this review is just to sort of talk about the immediate differences and why you might choose one or the other, or why you might choose both. Now, you don't have to have the Hexgaming Phantom. This is obviously basically a DualSense Edge on some steroids. It's had some mods done to it by Hexgaming, and it is better than a DualSense Edge in some respects as well. So you may choose that, but it is also very expensive, coming in at £229 or $229 compared to the £75-ish or $79-ish that the G7 Pro comes out at. And there are some marked differences between the two, but they both do things in their own unique way, which makes them stand out. So you may choose one or the other, or choose both, depending on the type of games you're playing. And I just want to talk about that. So yeah, I'm playing the new DLC for Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. This is the Order of the Giants DLC, and it is a great game. It does support DualSense out of the box, so it's got native support for adaptive triggers, advanced haptics, and so on. So that's really good, which means you can actually turn off Steam input. Although for some older games that don't have DualSense support, you probably want to leave Steam input enabled, because you can then go in and remap the various buttons to do whatever you want, which is a great feature of Steam, or Steam input within Steam. So that's certainly an option to customize it, because you don't get any app with DualSense controllers, and the Hexgaming Phantom does use Sony's official DualSense internals, which is why it's so well supported by games, and it's just native. And the buttons, the switches, everything like that, it's all Sony stuff. So yeah, you don't really lose out on anything. The additional changes that Hexgaming have made are in the back paddle buttons. They're obviously custom, and you get mouse clicky switches, so take a listen. And you can trigger lockout as well, like on the DualSense Edge, and you get mouse clicky triggers as well, hair triggers, if you do want that. But as I say, you do get the adaptive triggers, which are really good, and they're fully supported in this game, which I'll show shortly. And you get your full touchscreen and indicators for status, NPC warnings, awareness, and that sort of thing as well is fully supported. Inline audio is fully supported as well, and you've got your mute button and everything else. So yeah, everything is fully featured. Now, the Phantom does come in two flavors. It comes in a Hall effects version and a potentiometer version. I've got the potentiometer version here in grey, and I have got the Hall effect version in military green, or I've forgotten the exact name of it. It's a military green color anyway, in similar sort of matte finish coming, and that's the Hall effect version. And I will be comparing the two versions against TMR as well, because they don't have a TMR version of the Phantom yet. Whether they have that in the near future or not, I don't know, but at the moment it is just Hall effect and potentiometer. But don't let that sort of dissuade you or anything like that, because if I can get the back panel off, let's just fight with this for a second. Yeah, once you get the back panel off, you do have access to what Hexgaming called the Driftfix module, and this allows you to correct or recalibrate the stick drift that will no doubt happen as time goes on. Now, these do come pre-calibrated at the factory, so you don't need to change anything really, but they're there if you need to, and almost certainly you will need to at some point, because potentiometer sticks use physical metal contacts. Those contacts oxidize over time, increases resistance, and you get stick drift over time, basically. So the module basically rearranges that calibration for the potentiometer contacts, and as time goes on, that will wear out, so you'll need to readjust it more and more. But there will come a time when you can't readjust it, recalibrate it anymore, because you've reached the end point. It's sort of oxidized to an extent that you can't calibrate anymore. So yeah, potentiometer does have a finite lifespan, but it should be several years before that happens when you've got modules like this. A stock DualSense controller or a DualSense Edge doesn't have that feature. So once it's drifting, you have to physically replace the modules. You can do that with mods and so on. You can get TMR sticks for DualSense official controllers as well, but you do need to do a bit of soldering, and there's a bit of easy calibration that needs to be done once you've done that soldering as well. So there's a bit of legwork involved in doing it third party, but the alternative is to buy a controller like the Hexgaming Phantom, and you get all of those features built in. Now the Hall Effect version does come with a calibration module as well, but it's digital, so it's a ribbon cable that plugs in to the back, and you've got some buttons on the little module to recalibrate. So you get the option to do it that way, because you don't have a third-party companion app to readjust the stick, dead zones or anything like that. It is all done via the module. And otherwise, other than that, the Hexgaming Phantom feels and operates and performs just like a official Sony DualSense controller, because effectively inside it is a official DualSense controller. Now, with that, it also means the polling rates and things when connected to a PC are the same as a DualSense controller. By default, the USB connection is 250 Hertz, and I am using USB HCF, I think that's the name of it, could have got that wrong, to just unlock 1000 Hertz. So I am operating it at 1000 Hertz now. It's really easy to do, it's just a few clicks and then you click save and that's it. And what it does is it tells the specific USB port that you're connecting to that when this controller is connected to relay 1000 Hertz polling rate, basically. So that is, it's just all it's doing. So you do need to use the same USB port each time to get that full rate. Otherwise it's going to drop to 250 Hertz and you get slightly reduced. You're not going to notice it because I couldn't notice the performance between 250 and 1000, but the measurements from the tools that I've been using, they do show an improvement. So lower latency and so on. But stick response, everything like that, felt the same to me in games, in practice. So if you're a measurements kind of person, then yeah, by all means stick it to 1000 Hertz. But otherwise, it's just really good out of the box anyways it is. So I guess it's just for purists and sort of techie nerds who, like me, who like to tinker around and play around with stuff. The buttons are all membrane, so that's fine. They feel, as I say, exactly like the official Sony controllers. So there's no difference there, other than obviously the sticks and the additional buttons, which are clicky. And yeah, the quality is fine. The plastics quality is fine. There is a little bit of creaking. So if I grip the controllers and try to pull them apart, I'll put it close to the microphone. So you can hear some creaking, but that's mostly due to the fact that you've got your touch panel here, which takes away some of the framing and the bracing that would have been at the top otherwise. Whereas the GameSir G7 Pro doesn't have that at all. So I'm gripping it the same way and there's no noise at all. It's just, it's got its magnetic fascia, but all of this is solid construction. It's just one piece. But the downside to that is you don't have a touch panel area. You don't have adaptive triggers. And whilst you do have trigger motors, they're not very good. They're a bit too tinny and sort of annoying, and I just leave it disabled. You do have hair trigger lockout, and the other advantage is you've got some additional buttons across the top here, and you've got your paddle buttons at the bottom, and all of the buttons on the G7 and all GameSirs, to be honest, that use the Nexus or the other GameSir companion software can be remapped to do anything you want, including keyboard input and mouse input. So that's something that GameSir has nailed for a long time now, and it's one of the reasons why I always recommend GameSir controllers, because you get that granular control and that customization ability. You also have something called shift layer. So when you customize a button, you can have a secondary function to that same button via holding the shift layer button. And I've remapped the shift layer button on my controller to be this button here, which would usually be the share button on I guess on an Xbox official controller. So when you hold that button down and press whatever button you want to remap to, the secondary function actuates. So if I show you on here, I've got it set to show and hide my RTSS overlay or show and hide the Steam overlay if I press the other button. So it's just one of those cool things you can do, and I really like it. All of the buttons on the G7 Pro are also micro switch, so take a listen. That's the D-pad and the ABXY. You also have micro switch buttons on the top, but the shoulder paddles, they are just tactile clicky, they're not mouse click. The trigger lockouts, they are micro switch. And all in all, it feels good. It feels really nice in the hands. The textured rubber grips on the underside feature on both controllers, but the Hexgaming Phantom is a bit more textured and it feels a bit more premium, but not by much. The top side is plastic, even though it is textured, because you can also remove these faceplates as well. So I have got a G7 SE faceplate coming, which is the smoked black transparent cover. And on that, I can put the cross-shaped D-pad, because you do get some additional D-pads of different shapes with the G7 Pro. So that's kind of cool. That all comes out of the box. The other key difference is the G7 Pro is either wired, Bluetooth, or wireless 2.4 gigahertz, and I'm using the 2.4 gig via the docking station over there because it's got the dongle plugged in at the bottom. Whereas with the Phantom, it is only USB or Bluetooth. Now, Bluetooth does support over 500 hertz polling rate, and I've seen reports of it go all the way up to sort of 750, 800 hertz. But this will purely come down to the Bluetooth adapter that you have on your PC. Most USB Bluetooth dongles do not support that, and they'll be locked at something really low at like 31 hertz, as I found, especially Bluetooth 6 controllers, which use a really cheap, I've got the name of the brand, but it's some cheap Bluetooth controller, which is fine for headsets and microphones and things like that. But for controllers, for high polling rates, no, you don't want that. Whereas TP-Link UB500 is a micro Bluetooth adapter. That's one of the ones that are officially recommended by Sony themselves for PSVR and stuff. So that one does work with 500 hertz plus polling rate, and it's very cheap. It's around about £10 off Amazon. I have got one of those coming as well to test with. But all the reports I've seen online show that to be working perfectly fine. So if you do want a wireless experience on PC, then UB500 is the way to go. But you will need to use something like a DSX, which is also on Steam. It's not free, but what DSX allows you to do is get full DualSense functionality wirelessly as if you were connected to a PS5 console. That includes haptics, advanced haptics, the adaptive triggers, audio coming through, the internal speaker working, and so on. So I'll put a link to DSX in the description below. But at the moment, until all of those features are fully available, because I believe it's still work in progress under DSX, you will need to just use wired to get all of those features. So as long as you're wired, just get a lightweight cable. So this is a cable that came in my gaming mouse, and it's braided, but it's super lightweight. So when in use, it effectively feels wireless because it's so light and you don't even notice the cable. And I've got it plugged into my monitor, and I just plug it in when I need to, when I want to game, and that's it. And otherwise just unplug it, tuck it out of the way, job done. So it's not end of the world if you can't do it wireless, but for those who do sit back and want a wireless experience, TP-Link UB500, that's the adapter to use, and then use DSX to unlock those full DualSense features. So let's just talk about the game. Now, the main difference I noticed in the sticks, this is G7 Pro is TMR, and we've got potentiometer sticks here, but I believe, and I will confirm that once the Hall effect version arrives, I believe the sensitivity and the sort of the range of motion of the sticks is greater on the DualSense Edge, or the DualSense in general. This includes the Phantom, compared to all Xbox controllers. So this includes the G7 Pro, the G7 SE, Cyclone 2, all other variants of Xbox type controllers from other brands. It's exactly the same because the rotation distance, the range of motion or the distance of motion that you have is smaller. Because when I circle these sticks, I can feel what the distance is, how much range I'm getting from it. Whereas if I do the same on the DualSense or on the Phantom, it's more, there's more sort of range. So that's what I couldn't get my head around first, because I knew something felt a bit different with the DualSense compared to the Xbox type controllers, and I couldn't put my finger on it until I spent more time gaming with both back to back, and it became obvious where that difference was. So let's just go into the game and I can show you. Just let it load up. Right, so yeah, so if I'm moving the camera around, for example, it response between both sticks, TMR and potentiometer, is excellent. There's like no advantage between one or the other. It's just depending on preference. But the sticks reach the boundary edge sooner because there's less movement. So the acceleration, even though I've got my custom curve for the sticks in the GameSir software mapped out to be very similar to DualSense, there's still a difference in that the range, finite movements and so on, it does accelerate quicker because the distance on these sticks, whether it's TMR, Hall effect or potentiometer on Xbox, doesn't really matter because the range is still the same. So it just feels different. Whereas on here, I need to plug it in. Yeah, so it just feels more, it's really hard to describe without you feeling it yourself. That I just feel like I can be more precise with the DualSense because of that extended range of motion on each stick. So whilst the responsiveness is the same, the performance is the same, and the finite precision, so tiny movements, just watch the camera as I just basically touch, and the in-game dead zone is set to 5%, no, 8% in the settings. So let's just double check that. Go down to controller, go down to dead zones. Yeah, 8% for inner right and left sticks. And even at 8%, because this Phantom comes with 0 dead zones out of the box, slightest touch, barely moving it, even just 1 or 2 millimeters, and the camera moves. And you get that same on the GameSir G7 Pro. This is set to 0% dead zone in the software. And again, the slightest touch results in the camera moving. And if I wanted to put it at 10%, that'd still be fine, but I like that granularity where you can be as precise as you want. And it's just great. But as I say again, the range of motion of the sticks, the physical range of motion on each stick sensor on Xbox controller styles is lower than on DualSense. And as a result of that, I do feel that DualSense is the better controller for games like this, where you are both running and aiming or shooting or whatever. It's just more precise doing it that way. Now, the other thing I like about DualSense is the adaptive triggers. So I don't know if it's going to be entirely obvious on here, but so you can see there, it's just, there's a bit of resistance in this stick. Now, if I go to something else like the camera, yeah. So as I bring the camera up, I can feel there's additional resistance in the stick now that's just coming. And as the camera's brought up, the haptics, it resonates through the entire controller. And that's really cool. It's like Nintendo Switch HD Rumble, but better. So HD Rumble is great on Nintendo, but this is even better. And when you fire a gun, when you use the camera, let's just take a shot here. Yep, so you, again, taking a picture. I don't know, I'll put the camera, I'll put the controller closer to the microphone so you can hear it. So you can hear that click, whereas with the G7 Pro, because there's no adaptive triggers, it is just click. Now I could put it into hair trigger mode and then it's just like that, but adaptive triggers is just so much nicer an experience. It just gives an extra sense of immersion. Now, this game doesn't support the speaker, or I've not heard the speaker on the DualSense operate yet in this game, but in games like Chronos, The New Dawn, the speaker does work. So when you're doing certain actions, you'll get game audio coming through the speaker. That's really cool. So it's additional sense of immersion, but you get everything else. So when you're running and jumping, you can feel it's very sort of precise, and you can feel with the advanced haptics where the way it resonates through drops and climbs and stuff like that, raising the camera up, taking a shot, and the resistance varies depending on what you're doing. So the lighter, for example, has a different level of resistance in the sticks, or in the trigger, sorry. And you get resistance bringing it up. I can, of course, put it into trigger mode, and it is just on and off, but the best way is just to leave adaptive triggers on. And yeah, so I really like this. This has been a sort of a unique experience, because this is my first experience with DualSense. I'm not a console gamer, I'm a PC gamer, but yeah, everything's really cool. And the way I've mapped the buttons as well, you can obviously use the preset buttons to do various game profiles that are built into the controller by Hexgaming, or you can remap them to specific buttons yourself. Now what I've done is I've replicated the top buttons. So the shoulder buttons are the top two here, and the stick buttons, when pressing them in, are the bottom two here. So the left stick, pressing it in, would obviously be running normally, but I find it a bit uncomfortable pressing in the left stick whilst running, or to run whilst walking. So that, my middle finger on the left side controls that. So I can just walk and then press that button and I'm running straight away. It just makes it way easier. And especially when I'm trying to make a run jump on games like this, I can just hold it down and then I'm instantly running. So which means hold it down, run, jump. So you can get to long ledges much easier this way as well by doing that. So I wonder if I can climb up there. Yeah, so I can probably test it right here because there is a bit of a gap. So if I wanted to jump onto the ends there, normally I'd have to walk, pressing the stick as I'm walking and then jump. And that makes it a bit uncomfortable for my liking. So all I'm going to do instead is hold down that button, run, and then jump, and I'm there. So it just makes it way easier to do stuff like that. Whereas on here, I could do the same as well. I have done the same. And it's just, yeah, so you can map the bottom paddle to be the top, and then you can map the top buttons to whatever else you want. But you don't get the additional buttons here. There are just 2 paddle buttons on the underside. So that's the only downside to that. I mean, it's not end of the world, but it depends on what your preferences are. And then you don't have HD rumble on the G7 Pro either. There are just 2, one large motor, one small motor, and it's just regular rumble. The rumble is good on here, but it is just normal motor rumble. It is not HD haptics or anything like that. Whereas on the DualSense, you get full granularity and you feel what's going on through your palms, which is really, really nice. Even just punching a wall, so if I go up to here, punching the wall, depending on how hard you punch, you get a different level and you get a resonance through the controller as you rebound off as well. And rifles have a different level of resistance. It's great. I'm definitely a convert. Now, if I was on a budget, I'd just get a standard DualSense controller from Sony. They're not expensive. They're like, I don't know, £35 you could get them for at one point, I believe. But if budget was not really an issue, then something like this, I'd probably get the Hall Effect version. But as I say, I've not tried the Hall yet. It is in transit, so as soon as it arrives, I will compare the two. But I'm expecting it to be just as good as this. And Hall Effects obviously won't have the drift issue going forwards. But yeah, this has been really good. And as I say, the indicators to denote your status, if you're being seen or if you're on low on health and stuff, the indicators will light. You've got your player indicator as well. So if you've got multiple controllers connected that are DualSense, you'll get your lights to indicate which controller you are. It's just all of that works. And you can control all of these lights and things through Steam if you use Steam input. Otherwise, it's controlled by the game, which is what I'm using right here. So yeah, the other thing I found was the headphones output. The headset output does work really well. The downside is you don't get onboard volume control for the headphones. So for example, my Hi-Fi-Mans and Audeze LCD5, they work perfectly fine, decent volume level, not massively loud, but loud enough to enjoy gaming with. But you got to control the volume through Windows or through your keyboard or something else basically. Whereas on the GameSir G7 Pro, you have inline volume control. You just hold the M button and then press up and down on the D-pad, and that controls the volume. So that's the benefit, the Pro on that one. whereas you don't get that on Sony. On the console, when connected to a PS5, you have to go through the menu system and then adjust the volume for the headset connected to the controller. So yeah, I kind of wish you had the option to do that on this. Perhaps with DSX, you can do that with the button being held or something like that. You also get your mute button as well, by the way, which is got its LED. I don't know, because I'm not a user of DSX yet. I will use it once the final version has been released, but I mean, it's not end of the world. If you're using a headset, you've probably got inline volume control on the cord anyway. Otherwise, you can just use keyboard controls, which most keyboards have media controls anyway. So yeah, there is that. But yeah, in terms of comfort and feel, long-term usage, I've used both controllers for many hours now, many days in fact, and they're both insanely comfortable. I think this gets warmer in the hands because of the type of plastic being used and the type of rubber at the bottom, whereas the G7 Pro, it's the way this texture is on the grip especially, and the matte soft texture, whereas the Phantom is smooth plastic. This just feels, I don't know, I think this feels nicer in the hand for longer sessions. But I mean, this is still comfortable, as is the DualSense Edge. But yeah, I think both are very comfortable. It's just the G7 Pro slightly edges it in terms of long session comfort for people who do like to game for several hours at a time. That is the comparison between both of these controllers. 1000 Hertz obviously on this one as well, and performance between wireless and wired, I've not noticed a difference, to be honest with you. Loads of people online have said, you know, wireless has measurable latency differences. In practice, you're not going to notice that. I've not noticed it. I'm on an OLED monitor, 240 Hertz. All of my games are running at 100 Hertz, 100 FPS plus, and yeah, response time between everything has been perfect, really, regardless of whether I'm using wireless or wired. So yeah, no major problems there. So yeah, I will do a quick update. Perhaps I'll do it as a shorts video when I get the Hall Effect version in, just to reference that one and link back to this video. But until then, see you guys in the next one, and remember to press the like button, leave a comment. If there's anything you want me to test between the two controllers, leave a comment as well and I'll get back to you directly. But until then, see you in the next one.